Welcome everyone to this episode of the FML podcast. Today we're joined by Polly Gilbert. Polly, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be doing a podcast.
Do you want to just share a little bit about yourself and your journey so far?
Yeah, sure. Shamir, I was kind of expecting a Desert Island Disc style intro, so I will give the Desert Island Disc intro myself. So yes, my name is Polly Gilbert. I'm marketing director at Tembo. I'll jump in and tell you a little bit about Tembo in a bit, but I'll kind of start by giving you an overview of my journey so far. So I originally cut my teeth in creative brand advertising, agency side. So I spent some time at WPP. I won't go through all of the acronyms of the agencies that I've worked at because they're all quite long and complicated. But yeah, spent time in WPP and another kind of big ad network. After that, I was itching for a new challenge, I suppose, felt kind of frustrated trying to sell like a little bit more toilet roll or trying to get more people to buy our brand of fresh cream, and wanted to do something a bit more impactful. So I ended up leaving the last agency I was at with a colleague of mine, and we set up a Tech for Good initiative called Tap London. Ran that full time for about a year and a half, won a contract with the Mayor of London, ended up kind of handing the initiative over to them, which was in kind of my journey into marketing. I think Tap was really fundamental and kind of lay the foundations for what I've done later. And it really taught me how to build a brand on a shoestring budget, really. And the brands that I've been working with previously would be like Shell, Bayer, Nestle, not all brands that I'm hugely proud to have worked with, but big budgets, like huge production budgets, big teams. And Tap was just kind of stripping all of that back. What do you do when you have a really strong mission and you have barely any money? How do you communicate to your audience? Which have been invaluable learnings, really. So once we handed Tap over, I then joined an early stage startup. I was actually the fourth employee, I think, at Goodbox, which is a payment processing company helping charities to raise more money through digital technology. And then after that, I joined Tembo, where again, I was the fourth employee. So it seems to be a theme for me of joining early stage startups. But that's a bit about my journey so far.
At Tap London, you said you passed off the initiative to obviously the Mayor of London. But just to give you an idea of the sort of scale of the initiative, you engaged over 100,000 people and brought them into the initiative. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's actually far, far more than that now. I'd say it's probably 350,000, 400,000 people. Tap was very much an idea that came out of the brains of two people that were working in advertising, and that we spotted this problem, which was Londoners really, really care about homelessness, but nobody really understands kind of what the right thing is to do. You have the police telling you not to give money on the street, but the people that you see that you feel most emotionally impacted by are often on the street. You don't know which charity you should give to. There's always bad press about charities. You kind of want to give local, but you don't know any local charities. And Tap was really a way of helping people to take one simple action that isn't going to cost them the earth. It was just £3 that funds a local organisation, and doing all of that through technology. So essentially what we did was set up a network of contactless giving points around London. And wherever you were, you would tap, give £3, and that money would go to a local cause nearby that was helping homeless people. So that was at the heart of it, how it works. I will be honest and say we went through a couple of different iterations to get there. We ran a scheme for a while that was similar to the big issue, where we were employing people who were directly experiencing homelessness, but we were using contactless tech. So we tried out a number of different things in our quest to find product market fit, as everybody does. But yeah, that's Tap.
You know, with your experience at Goodbox, Tap, and now Tembo, versus running campaigns for the Bayers that you mentioned of the world, what do you think has been the fundamental difference? Obviously, other than the money, what's been the fundamental difference in how you've had to approach marketing these brands versus, say, a large brand?
One of the biggest differences has been that everything I've done in my career since leaving advertising has been, I've always worked in companies where I've felt truly aligned to their mission. And that's been true of Tap, Tembo, Goodbox. And I think when you are able to kind of build your brand messaging, and it's not even just your messaging, it's how does that filter through to like your values? How does it filter through to your team and how you run your team? When that has such a strong mission, I found it much easier to craft really, really impactful brand campaigns and messaging, even when you have smaller budgets. But equally, the world is a different place since then. Like back in the day, I remember doing, I won't say the brand, but I used to run the kind of production for social ads for a certain brand. And we would do kind of full budget shoots. I'm sure this still happens for some brands, but you didn't really see the kind of production quality that we see now on social. And yes, you wouldn't want to put that production necessarily on TV. It wouldn't work that way. It wouldn't work vice versa. But yeah, I think the world has changed so much, and we're now is much better suited for kind of small companies with smaller budgets, in that you can create something yourself in half an hour that can deliver you a brilliant CAC if you set it up with the right audience on the right channels.
I think fintech is a prime sector that really leans into community. You've got all of these neobanks now that are focusing on very specific areas. Like I think it's Greenwood in the US for Black and Latin community. You've got Algebra that's focusing on the ethical community, and there's so many more that are following those sort of strands. Which I think actually is almost a segue into Tembo, because Tembo is obviously a brand that's focusing on a community that perhaps struggles with getting traditional mortgages and traditional products to support them in purchasing a home. Tembo have just secured their Series A. So obviously some good, obviously demonstrates some good numbers, some traction there. Tell us a little bit about Tembo, who they are, what they do, and we can perhaps then talk about the growth journey there.
At Tembo, I do always like to start by saying we are on a mission to help more people become homeowners. And that is really what we are all about. So we founded Tembo really because there is this growing disparity between generations in the UK, where you have a generation of young adults who are living in a delayed adulthood. They're living at home longer. They're living in the family home longer than any generation before. They are delaying big life events. So things like having kids, getting a master's, sometimes not even delaying them, sometimes just not doing them at all. And that is largely because people are finding it harder to find that financial stability, and they're finding that later in life than previous generations. So in the UK, 75% of housing wealth is owned by people over the age of 55, and they don't even make up 20% of the population. And the media, I always think, like to kind of pit these two generations against each other, like it's millennials versus boomers kind of thing. But if you actually speak to any of these people, if you speak to your parents, or I don't know, speak to anybody who has family members, nobody wants their children or grandchildren to be the first generation in history that are worse off than their parents. That is not an outcome that anybody wants. As a society, we will always want progression. We want things to get better. And actually, we spotted an opportunity at Tembo where the bank of mum and dad in general in the housing world has always been like a bit of a dirty word, that you think this is just for people who have significant amounts of money. They can just hand over 50k to their kids as a deposit. But actually, if you kind of reinvent that and think about new ways of sharing money. So say somebody could help their grandchild get on the property ladder by using their pension income, or by using some of the equity that they've built up in their home, or a parent might be able to do it using their employed income. It would massively democratise access to home ownership for a new generation of buyers. And that was really the founding principle of Tembo, is how can people work together to achieve their life goals? So we have a range of products that help people do that. So use their pension income, employment income, property to help somebody else make a move. And it's not just family members. I mean, we see friends helping each other. We had somebody come to us recently where the buyer, I think he was a poet, like a poet, and sometimes did some journalism. And his income had just been absolutely decimated during COVID, as you might imagine. And his friend is very, very senior in a fairly big scale-up fintech and wanted to help his friend get on the ladder. So he used some of his income to help his friend get on the property ladder. So we see loads of different ways of people engaging and helping one another. But the fundamental of Tembo is people working together to achieve their goals.
Let's talk about your growth journey, or the journey to Series A. And I kind of want to, again, go back to Tap and Goodbox. What learnings did you take from there that helped you drive growth, acquisition customers at Tembo, and to the success of then, landing the Series A?
Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much in my career. I would say in the early days at Tap, the learnings were thick and fast. And really, it was quite centered around moving from a very structured environment, very process driven, working with big accounts, big budgets. And then at age, I think I was 23 or 24 when I left and founded Tap, to all of a sudden kind of forging your own path. And actually, one of the really brilliant things about doing that early is it teaches you to pivot. I mean, any business owners will tell you that you need to be agile and able to pivot quite quickly and look for new opportunities. And I had exposure to that from quite a young age, really. So definitely kind of learning the I guess the basics of entrepreneurship in those early days was massively beneficial for me further down the line. At Goodbox, I mean, I had loads of brilliant learnings there. I think in particular, I've enjoyed in my career having a mixture of B2B and D2C marketing. So Goodbox, we were very focused on B2B marketing and did some really interesting kind of projects in B2B that I've actually been able to carry through into Tembo. So for example, one of the most successful and fairly low cost campaigns we used to do at Goodbox was basically kind of publishing white papers and studies, and then we would not only kind of do PR around that, but we would also host events, and it would often be quite a curated guest list of prospects, kind of big clients that we were trying to win over, and we always had really, really good success with those, and I found them very fruitful and also had good return. And at Tembo, we've been able to do kind of enlist a similar strategy that we will do research, we'll then kind of roll that out into PR, and we're actually exploring ways that we can kind of bring our community into that and build those into real life events. So loads of learnings along the way.
So we've spoken about learnings that you've carried across. Let's come talking about sort of on the ground at Tembo. What channels, what strategies, what approaches do you think have delivered the best results for you?
I would say from January this year, we kind of found product market fit. And last year, so 2021, was very much exploration, trying things out, seeing what was going to work, trying different channels, targeting different audiences, different personas. And it was really in January that we started to find the right fit for us and kind of really build up some momentum. And since then, we've had 40% month on month growth since January. So we've had amazing results from there. But I think, honestly, one of the key things has been paid acquisition. So not only from the perspective of finding that right target customer to bring in and being able to reproduce that at scale, but also in the very, very early stages, it's just getting people to your website and getting people on the phones. We're a service business, so we speak to customers every single day, and we're very lucky to do that. I mean, in previous companies, I've been desperate to speak to customers and it's impossible. We have a business where we get to interact with our customers constantly and hear how they engaged with our product, how they engaged with our brand. But in the early days, when you're looking for those early advocates that you can bring into your kind of user-generated content, into your marketing, I think paid acquisition, it just gives you the chance to immediately start seeing the funnel results of how are people engaging with our product. When we make changes, what impact does that have? If we had waited for organic growth to do that, I think we would have been waiting a very long time. So it's probably a simple answer to the question, but I mean, paid acquisition has been absolutely fundamental for us in terms of building out our product and getting that initial user base and finding some evangelists.
There's always a big debate around paid, and you know, we've had guests on before, and you know, I think just generally in the marketing community that, you know, to a degree, some feel that running paid activity is cheating. You can deliver it via organic. You know, what's your stance on this? Obviously, you know, it's been successful for Tembo. Is it something that you were reluctantly adopted, or is it something that you just sort of leaned into and you saw it as the go-to channel for you?
I mean, I've been cheating a very long time, if that's cheating. I definitely didn't resist it. For me, it's the quickest way of kind of getting those initial users to your site. And the two twin tracks have to work alongside each other, right? Like, you want to have organic growth. You want to be building a community and building, I guess, if you had to turn off your Google campaign tomorrow because you had no money, or Google shut down, or they changed their algorithms and you all of a sudden stopped having any impact, you want to know that you've got that customer base. So you want to be building out referrals. You want to be building those longer term relationships, building your organic. But for me, it just is a reality that you do both. And it wouldn't be an option to remove either from the mix. I mean, we in particular have had amazing success with search, and we've kind of found a really good niche of high intent customers who are in the perfect consideration phase for us of thinking about how a family member could help them get on the property ladder, which is really important when you're an early stage business. You need to be able to get those early sales quickly. And then in terms of the longer term play for us, we kind of call it in-market, out-of-market customers. So in-market customers are people who are actively looking for a property. They might be actively thinking about how a family member could help them, or they're thinking they need to boost their budget to get the home they want. Out-of-market customers are people that might not even be thinking about buying a home. They might have just lost all hope that could ever happen for them, and they're not even looking. And so it's a longer term play for us to reach those out of market customers. We do focus more on kind of, I guess, top of funnel, social, paid social, and we also try and capture them through organic. But it's both of those twin tracks are vital. We need both of them in the ecosystem.
Have you dabbled in the TikTok space yet, or are you focusing more on the traditional Facebook? Because I suppose Facebook is traditional now, isn't it? It's no longer cutting edge.
I know, which makes me feel very old.
Yeah, don't say it.
Yeah. But yes, we are exploring TikTok now, which is exciting. I mean, we've had good early results from TikTok, low CPL. I think it's one of those things when I spoke to our CEO about going onto TikTok, he's like, no, it's only children on TikTok. It's like, Richard, no, I am there too, and I'm a fully grown adult. But I would say, actually, kind of winding back to what we were speaking about earlier, and with the rise of TikTok and Reels and all of these ways that brands can make really engaging content super, super quickly, I would caveat that by saying that it doesn't happen kind of by magic. It's graft creating that content. Even if it's made on an iPhone, it takes a while to create that and build a content strategy around it. So I would say that for brands that are looking at getting into it, even if you're building that content yourself, make sure that you're allowing enough resource for it, because it is time consuming.
I think a lot of brands, don't necessarily put the time, energy, or effort, or into investment of producing, good quality content. Whether it's videos or written content or blogs or whatever it is. TikTok's kind of like the latest demonstration of that. That the brands that are really making the time and effort to produce high quality or good quality content, because it's not necessarily high quality. It's working with influencers, creating native content. But you look at someone like Mr. Beast, who spends God knows how much creating, video, and he just really doubles down on it. He's been so
Yeah.
successful.
I do think there are times, as we have been pre-Series A, where you're looking at your resource and you know that to be able to succeed on those channels, you need to be publishing not only high quality content, but you need to be doing it consistently and regularly. TikTok, as an example for us, I wish that we had launched organically on TikTok sooner. But what I didn't want to do is create 3 bits of content, publish those on TikTok, and then not do anything for kind of another 3 weeks. It's just not a good strategy. So I think there are times that it's still hard, isn't it, trying to juggle the resource that you have and make sure that you're getting out quality content consistently. It's always the toss up, isn't it, in early stage startups, is managing your resource.
Something has to give. There's priorities and hard decisions need to be made. What's your process behind that? What's your thought process behind how you prioritize which channels you want to target? What are the variables that you're looking at?
We focus the vast majority of our budget on our kind of core campaigns, I suppose, our tried and tested campaigns that we've been refining over the last year and a half. And then we employ like a test and learn budget, essentially. When we were launching on TikTok, it was very much a test and learn budget. And really, with new channels, even organically, I would take the same approach. I mean, we have an SEO strategy that's been in place for a year now, and we need to make sure that we're kind of focusing on that consistently and not kind of becoming distracted from that. So it's trying to find ways of implementing new channels without that being to the detriment of existing strategies that you have running. And I don't have the perfect answer to that. I mean, that is resources, the thing that is in shortest supply in startups, and often it's people's time. So yeah, I don't have the perfect answer, but for me, it's trying to kind of keep consistency in the channels that we've been investing in, and then work out the right way to kind of get into new spaces.
My perspective is sort of focus on where we've got the highest intent and hammer that audience and then kind of work our way outwards from that.
Yes,
and then, like you
yeah,
said,
for sure.
I wasn't as eloquent as you.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is for us. So our core campaigns is where at the moment, largely on search really. And that is where we are attracting our highest intent customers. These are the people that we can convert fairly quickly. So let's say average kind of 61 days, which might sound incredibly long, but when you're thinking about often the biggest decision of people's lives, it's actually incredibly fast. And then all of our top of funnel areas, so things like Facebook, Meta, Insta, TikTok, those are our longer play. It's where we kind of attract more discovery customers that we might be nurturing for a longer period of time. We're going to be taking them through our email nurture. We're going to be trying to speak to them, like our customer success will be trying to speak to them and kind of get them to understand the mortgage process. We'll be feeding them content from our content hub, because a lot of those people will come to us where homeownership is just a distant dream and they might not understand how everything works. So it's our job to educate them before we necessarily start thinking about selling to them.
So now that you've landed your Series A, that's going to be a little bit more budget available to you. Where are you planning on splurging? What's going to be your big splurge in terms of your marketing activity? Have you had those discussions? Have you deliberated on on the strategy just yet?
So we have just closed our Series A. It's literally happened this week, which is super exciting. And Richard will hate me for saying this, but I am very excited to splurge. So we've all of our campaigns across all of our channels, really, we have a significant amount of headroom. So there will be some that is much of the same. There'll be some where we're just working to kind of scale spend amongst campaigns that we already know are working and then make refinements. So focusing on kind of conversion rate optimization on our core landing pages, all of that jazz. I'm really excited to start testing some new audiences in social. We've been running kind of prospecting and retargeting for a period of time, but we've been doing that to quite a broad audience. And I think now we have a really exciting opportunity to look at kind of location-based marketing, to look at targeting some of these interesting, more niche audiences that have cropped up in the last 6 months. So we kind of over-index with single women aged 28 to 40. We over-index on people that are going through breakups. Unfortunately, it's sad, but you often find that people, when they're going through a breakup, they want to try and find a way to stay in the family home, and they're looking for ways to kind of stretch their affordability so they can do that. I think we've got some really exciting opportunities to do that through paid social. And aside from that, I think we're going for a big push on brand above the line activations, but finding ways to do that are cost effective, because as I'm sure you know, it's a difficult market to fundraise in at the moment. And we're super proud that we did it. It speaks to the amazing metrics that we've had, the growth that we've had so far. But as a company, we're really focusing on profitability. And I think in the startup space, it's definitely been my experience, profitability hasn't been something that many companies have really had to think about.
It hasn't really been a consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
It's not even an afterthought in some cases. It's quite crazy when you think about it.
it really is. There'd be other metrics that would be infinitely more important than your profitability. And I'm sure there will continue to be for many companies, but we're lucky to have really strong return on investment, return on spend. The lifetime value of our customers is very high in comparison to our CAC, and we have this opportunity to become more self-sufficient than I think many startups, certainly startups that I've been in, have afforded to do so. So it does pose an interesting challenge for us in terms of marketing, is kind of doubling down on what we're doing, bottling the areas that we see the highest intent and kind of scaling that, but also finding ways to expand brand recognition, to increase awareness of Tembo, increase awareness of our offering, in a cost-effective way.
So yeah, so for someone who's only just raised their Series A, that was a pretty comprehensive, probably quite well thought out answer. So you've clearly been thinking about it for some time. An area that we haven't touched upon, we talked a lot about, the performance marketing. We talked a little bit about sort of above the line brand awareness. But one thing you touched on was the fact that on average it's taken about 61 days to take a customer through the funnel, which, like you said, for arguably some of the biggest decisions in people's lives, that's actually quite a short period. Arguably, on par or even quicker than perhaps traditional mortgage products. I'd like to get underneath the hood of that a little bit. You mentioned that you've got a customer service team. Where does sort of the marketing point begin in terms of you have a user that hits your website, they sign up, you capture their email address and they start that sort of below the line journey with you. How much influence do you have over that, and what levers are you pulling? And then when does that kind of leave your hands and move over to the customer service team, if at all?
Yeah, we kind of pass the baton back and forth, I suppose you could say. But when a customer signs up on the website, they will go through our online fact find. We've invested a lot of time and attention kind of with our product team, doing research, user interviews to work out. It's really a balancing act, and I'm sure a lot of other startups have this, of making it a user-friendly experience while also triaging customers effectively, so that we're not passing through unqualified leads, and equally from a customer's experience, we're not making them feel like they can do something they can't. Like, there's nothing more frustrating than going through a sign-up flow, speaking to somebody and then them saying, no, you're not eligible. So it's definitely a balancing act for us in that sense of capturing enough information to adequately qualify. Mortgages are complex. We're advising on kind of highly complex mortgages. So it's a balancing act there. We obviously engage various kind of prompt tools as we go through. So we use live chat to kind of pop up when people are stuck at a certain stage. We engage lots of different tactics once somebody has completed a plan to try and get them to the next stage, which is booking an appointment. And from that stage, somebody will enter into our nurture journey. So we go for quite a personalised approach. It's based on the inputs that they've told us and the products that they're eligible for. We'll also encourage somebody to actually go in and complete their plan. And from there, really, it's a mix. I mean, we use SMS, we use email. We also, as I've said, have a customer success team. So we have like face-to-face contact. But what is really important, and this is where kind of the brand really comes into play, is making sure that the Tembo brand kind of floods through all of those different touch points. And we've done quite a lot of interesting work and have some interesting around this. We're looking at doing empathy training with our team in the next couple of months, which I think is going to be amazing. I actually spoke to a guy from another startup who had done this with his team, and he said it was kind of transformative in not only the experience for the user, but also the experience for the team in just having more kind of personal human conversations with people. At Tembo, we are genuinely helping people to do things that they never thought they could do. And there's something kind of pretty magical in that. And if you can bring that into your brand, and if you can bring that into the interactions you're having with people, whether that's through email, text, phone conversation, speaking to an advisor, coming along to an event, I think that's when you kind of really start to feel the magic that a brand can bring.
I think the empathy training is just super interesting. I've got lots of questions around that, and as you're talking, I was kind of thinking, oh, actually, is that something that Growth Gorilla could benefit from? And I suppose that's, and like I said, when the magic happens, I always think that the companies that are the most successful is when the other departments allow, marketing and brand to leak into theirs and embrace it, and then it becomes embracing of the culture.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And then you can really start to. Yeah, you can start to make magic happen at that point, because I think there's a big difference, between the ones that do and the ones that don't.
Yeah.
The one that always comes to mind weirdly is Disney, for some reason, not fintech, but I just think, the way that the entire business is built around creating a warming feeling in people, whether it's a movie or going to the theme park or whatever it is, and just imagine what their brand guidelines must be. I've got no idea, I've never seen them, but it just makes me think.
I would hazard a guess that they are very magical and warming. But no, I completely agree. In my experience, in the early days of startups, and most of my experience has been in very early stage startups, it's unlikely you're going to have an established people team, if you have a people team at all. And actually, if you can have either a marketing person at the decision-making table, which I always think best performing companies do, or as you say, you let brand and marketing kind of permeate different departments, I actually think that's the closest you can get to having a strong people culture in an early stage startup where there's not necessarily a way of enforcing that.
You mentioned SMS, and that's the topic that hasn't come up a lot on this podcast. I was talking to my head of CRM here. We were doing a proposal for a client, and he went, oh, we should definitely do SMS for them. And I said to him, really? Do you think that works? And he just messaged me back. He went, it's big. And then that was it. So talk to us about that. Has SMS moved the dial for you?
I mean, we see better results on SMS than on email in our CRM. So it is absolutely core to our engagement. And I mean, I spoke earlier about us having a longer sales cycle. We have multiple different points at which we need to keep customers engaged, re-engage them, request documents, kind of keep them coming back to the document portal to kind of process their submission. And in general, text has been really, really important to that. It's actually something that I would like to explore more. At the moment, we use it as a kind of largely in the CRM process as like a trigger to get people to kind of take the next step in the sales journey. But I would quite like to explore, especially after we've done this empathy training, how we can bring it into even our advice process. I mean, one of the challenges that we have as an advice business, FCA regulated, is that a lot of our customers, who are mostly millennials, Gen Zs, they don't love talking on the phone. They don't love answering their phones. And I think there's some really interesting opportunities for brands using kind of WhatsApp for Business, exploring how text and WhatsApp can really help them speak to their audience in a way that they like to be spoken to, or on the channels they like to be spoken to on.
Yeah, we've got a client that's experimenting with WhatsApp for that millennial audience. And I think you just sort of hit on a point there, which is talking to the audience in the way that they like to be spoken to. And I think sometimes we, as marketers, get caught up in, particularly B2B, let's just drive traffic to a landing page, capture a lead, and then, we'll send a bunch of emails and give them a call. Whereas I think, if you're not looking at how consumers are, or your consumers that you're targeting, how they're consuming information, how they like to communicate, you're massively missing a trick. It reminds me of a friend of mine who's he's in a service business, and he spent a lot of his time wining, dining his clients, going out for drinks and things like that. And I remember catching up with him a few years after I sort of worked with him, more recently. And I said to him, how are things going? And he was struggling a little bit because he was saying, oh, well, no one wants to meet for lunch or go for drinks anymore. And what he's finding is that younger generation has come in and they're like, no, we don't need a drink.
Yeah.
Just send it via email, and that's how they want to be spoken to. And that's how they want to manage their time. They don't fancy a boozy lunch. I'll avoid any avocado jokes, but they don't want a boozy lunch anymore. And I think that's something that we forget as marketers. And I suppose my question around that is in terms of surfacing that information and learning how to communicate to your audience, is that something that you sort of stumbled upon by accident, or is that the result of surveying your audience, talking to your audience, and surfacing the information that way?
I mean, the honest answer is it is a mix of the two. We have, I would say, very good kind of funnel MI data, which we analyze daily. So that's a really brilliant way for us to kind of track which channels are working, which campaigns are working, what is delivering engagement and what isn't. So absolutely it is a data question. But also there is the kind of human element to it too. It's like marketing is a science and it's also an art. And we spend quite a lot of time speaking to our customers. As I said earlier, we're lucky to be able to speak to our customers on a daily basis. But equally, we run focus groups, and that just gives us a chance to get to know those customers really well and kind of understand where they want to hear from us, where they don't. Like our booster audience, for example, would probably absolutely hate it if we sent them a WhatsApp. Our buyer audience would love that, and that's probably a better way for them to communicate even with their advisor. So I would say it's a mix of two. It's having that data that allows you to analyze what is and isn't working, but also having that human contact with your audience, not just building out kind of abstract personas and talking about Susan from Surrey, but like knowing them, speaking to them. It has made a huge difference for me and my understanding of the people we're speaking to.
It's no coincidence that every time I speak to successful fintech organizations, data ends up coming up in the conversation at some point. Data, surveys, talking to customers. Polly, it's been fantastic having you on. Before I let you go, I'd like to jump into our quick fire round.
Ooh.
What podcast do you have on repeat right now?
I'm a bit of a history nerd and I am obsessed with The Real Dictators. I don't know if you've ever listened to it before, but they have just done a very brilliant series on Napoleon and I would highly recommend it.
What books are you reading at the moment or would recommend to our audience?
Now you're going to shame me because I haven't read a book in ages, but a book that probably would be very relevant to your audience, and I would imagine a lot of people might have read, is The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen that came out earlier this year. That is a very good book.
I haven't read that. I will add to the list. What's your favourite fintech app or fintech product other than Tembo, obviously?
Yeah, don't worry, I won't say Tembo. Well, I have to say, I have been a very early evangelist of Moneybox. I absolutely love Moneybox. I signed up probably 6 years ago and they helped me save a deposit for my house. And after I emptied my account, which I know you're not meant to do with those savings account, but after I did empty it to get on the property ladder, I have then been able to start feeding back into it again. But I just love their interface. I really like their brand. And I have definitely told many people about Moneybox. So I assume they're doing pretty well from a network effect if I'm anything to go by.
Yeah, I've heard they're doing pretty well. And what's the best bit of life advice you've ever received?
I actually got some really good life advice when I had just found a tap. And it was when we were running this scheme where we were hiring people who are homeless. And I would say it's probably the most stressed I've ever been in my life. And we went for a meeting with the funder. I remember the guy said to me, always adopt the attitude of playful curiosity and you can overcome any challenge. And I think that's really good because sometimes when you are looking at a problem, whether it's a campaign that previously was delivering brilliant results for you and now the CPL has suddenly shot up, or you launch a new campaign and it doesn't land as you expect it to, it can be really easy to have these kind of horrible moments of like panic or dread. And I love the idea of just adopting playful curiosity in what you do, that you're trying out the next thing. If something doesn't work, you try something new. And it really ties into, I think, what is core and fundamental to startups, which is the idea of agility and moving quickly. But on a kind of personal level, I've always found it deeply reassuring. So whenever something gets super stressful, you just think, I'm going to be playfully curious about this and we'll brainstorm our way through.
It's good advice. I like that. Polly, that's been amazing. Really enjoyed that. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.